Good evening. Welcome to the September 9th, 2019 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased to have Councilman Pennington lead us with the invocation, so if you would please rise for that and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for all the blessings you've given us in this great city of Troy. We thank you for our first responders, fire, police. Pray that you keep them safe, keep them under your wing. We pray for those that are less fortunate. Pray that you lift them up. We thank you for everything you've done for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Pennington. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
Here.
All present. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have two this evening. C1 is a proclamation to proclaim September 11th through 17th, 2019 as Michigan Patriot Week in the city of Troy. And I'd like to present a proclamation to John Wilson, Director. If he could meet me at the podium, I'll meet him there.
Mayor?
Come on around.
Okay.
Thank you. John, as the mayor of the city of Troy, it's my honor to present a proclamation on behalf of the city council, citizens of Troy, and businesses to proclaim Patriot Week, September 11th through the 17th, 2019, and I'd like to read this proclamation to you and into the record. Whereas the history and first principles of the United States of America should serve as the cornerstone of civic education. In great reverence to the victims of the 9/11 attacks, we acknowledge that American citizens must take time to honor the principles, founders, documents, and symbols of their history. And whereas the events that led to the signing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the delegates of the Constitutional Convention on September 17th, 1787, have significance for every American and are honored in public schools across the nation on September 17th as Constitution Day. And whereas revolution, the rule of law, social impact, equality, unalienable rights, and limited government are the first principles upon which America was founded and flourishes. And whereas exceptional, visionary, and indispensable Americans such as Thomas Paine, Patrick Henry, John Adams, John Marshall, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King Jr., Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan Anthony, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison founded and advanced the United States. And whereas the Bennington flag, work of Betsy Ross, American flag, suffragist flag, Union flag, Gadsden flag, and the flag of the state of Michigan are key physical symbols of American history that should be studied and remembered by each American citizen. So now therefore be it resolved that the Troy City Council does hereby proclaim September 11th through 17th, 2019 as Michigan Patriot Week in the city of Troy, Michigan, symbolically beginning the celebration on September 11th, concluding on Constitution Day, September 17th. And be it further resolved, the Detroit City Council calls upon the citizens businesses, nonprofit organizations, and schools of Troy to recognize and participate in this extended holiday by honoring and celebrating the first principles, key historic figures, founding documents, and symbols of America, so that they may be the reference that is due to our free republic. Presented this 9th day of September 2019. It's signed by myself, all members of City Council. John, thank you so much for being here to accept this proclamation on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
No matter what you do, Cindy, I'm not going to look back on it.
1 minute.
Is there film in there?
Why don't you say a few words?
Oh, I will. Just a moment.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I just want to thank Mayor Slater and City Council and the residents of Troy for this wonderful honor for Patriot Week and the proclamation started by Judge Warren and his daughter. And we're celebrating our 10th anniversary of Patriot Week and the founding principles and celebrating those through education and acknowledging how critical all those are to us, our freedoms, our principles, our equality, and so forth. So thank you so much for the honor, and we'll have this hung on the wall. Thank you again. Yeah. Are you ready for another picture? Here we are.
I can't believe that.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Next, I have the honor of presenting a proclamation for special recognition to the Troy Somerset Gazette on its 40th anniversary year. And I'd like to ask publisher-owner Mark Nicholson and staff to come forward. I'd like to present this proclamation to you and your staff, and thank you for being part of our community. They can walk around.
Make sure Cindy's in the back.
Okay. Oh, no, come on. Please. No? Claire? Okay. I think we know Claire well enough that she's not going to come. Well, it certainly is my honor to be here this evening to present a proclamation in recognition of Troy Somerset Gazette's 40th anniversary year. And I'd like to read this because the Troy Somerset Gazette has meant so much to our community. It's a source of information, and without it and its stories, the city of Troy certainly would not be as informed, that's for sure. So, whereas the Troy Somerset Gazette has been in operation since September 1980 and will begin its 40th year on September 23rd, 2019, with a special issue that will highlight the history and progress of the newspaper and the city of Troy. And whereas Claire Weber started the, where is she? She's right over here. Claire started the Somerset Gazette in September 1980 to cover the city's business, civic, and residential communities every Monday morning. Her goal was to help all of them be successful and to present the good news about what they were doing to make Troy a great place to live, work, and play. And whereas the Somerset Gazette, a free paper distributed at local businesses, restaurants, and stores has provided the Troy community with local news every Monday for over 2,000 weeks straight. What an incredible accomplishment. And whereas in 2015, Gazette Media Group, under its new publisher, Mark Nicholson, expanded its presence by launching 2 more newspapers, the Rochester and Rochester's Gazette and the Shelby Utica Macomb Gazette. And whereas, with local news outlets diminishing over the years, and a renewed conversation about the importance of supporting local news, this was an opportune time for local government to underscore the ways in which a paper like the Somerset Gazette and all local newspapers are vital community resource. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the Troy City Council and the City of Troy extends special recognition to the Troy Somerset Gazette on its 40th anniversary year, and be it further resolved that the Troy City Council and all the Troy residents congratulate the Troy Somerset Gazette and its hardworking staff for the 40 years of dedication and service to the Troy community. Presented this 9th day of September, once again is signed by myself, all members of City Council. Once again to Claire, your staff, the new owners, Mark, congratulations and thank you so much for what you do for our community. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Always get that. Are you smiling, Cindy? Doesn't she say that to me?
I just want to take a minute and say thank you to Mayor Slater and the council. I've been a resident of Troy for over 25 years now, and have always been proud to be a resident of this community. It's a fabulous community, and in 2015, with the opportunity that Claire gave me to become a part of the paper, has been nothing but a dream come true. And it's something I take a lot of pride in. I know our staff takes a lot of pride in too, and we're very proud to put out a great community paper every week for the city of Troy. So thank you very much.
Can't get the backup documents from anything. From the backups here. I click on the links.
From which one?
From any of them. Usually when I click on the links, they bring up the backup documents. Is it working for anybody else? It's working for people.
That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. Congratulations, on both of those prestigious proclamations. It was my honor to read those. Thank you. There are no carryover items this evening or public hearings, so we will move to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Ava Landmesser, Troy resident, wishes to speak on P2B. Good evening. I'm sorry, I forgot to move that forward. Could you bring the mic forward to you? Yeah, there we go.
Is that better?
A little bit more. Perfect.
Thank you. I did want to just make a small comment on this cybersecurity subject, and I thank the city manager's office and several of the council who personally took an interest in it. And it is a vital interest to me, and I'm sure a lot of citizens in the community. I just had one question about it, and I don't know that it was brought up in this report. It may be hidden in some way that I couldn't find it. But the information that I've read about it, it seems to be the hackers at the moment, at any rate, are attacking smaller communities that have limited sophisticated equipment and training, and they don't have any insurance. I had no idea that you could get, cybersecurity insurance, and I have no idea how costly it might be. But it might be a good idea for the city manager's office, if they haven't already done it, and perhaps they have, look into that, because it might save us some money in the long run. So thank you again very much for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll call on Doug Dombrowski, Troy resident, wishes to speak on P2A.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I have a fun topic here, which I think is a change. Section P, 2A of the agenda tonight has a proposal to amend the animal ordinance to expand the ownership of chickens as pets. Research shows that there's a growing suburban interest in the ownership for hobby purposes because it's fun and rewarding. There's at least 34 cities in the state of Michigan, suburban and urban cities, that allow this and regulate it in their animal ordinances, including Troy. Troy, however, is unique in that we have a 3/4 acre minimum yard requirement in order to have any farm animal. One must ask themselves, why 3/4 of an acre? Because cows and horses, they need 2 acres minimum for each cow. A chicken needs 14 square feet. Livestock is allowed to graze. They need space. Poultry, they're confined. So maybe the 3/4 of an acre is intended to protect neighbors. But our ordinance allows that once an owner has 3/4 of an acre, they can have unlimited animals. And they can place them on the property line, and they can manage them however they want. Even country ordinances don't allow this. They have more provisions in there to control waste management, noise, all sorts of things. We lack that. We rely solely on 3/4 of an acre. What I'm suggesting is to change the animal ordinance to better reflect what these other cities are doing. What we do is divide up farm animals between livestock and poultry. And it's up to the council to do whatever they want with livestock. However, for the interest of poultry, I suggest considering the revisions that I've drawn up personally, and I believe you have a copy of, to allow for 2 to 4 pet chickens for people who can show that they can adhere to the strict regulations of distance from neighbors, coop, how it looks, where it's placed, and such. Our neighboring cities like Warren, Clawson, Berkeley, Huntington Woods, and Ferndale have this. I think we could too. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, I'll call upon John Clueless, Troy resident, who wishes to speak on I-4.
Again, I rise to address the proposed investigation into the culture of complicity created by this council. As everyone knows, it ultimately led to former city manager Brian Kishnick spending years in federal prison. First of all, I believe there's a serious conflict of interest hidden within the memo. The memo proposes interviewing city employees to determine who knew what and when. But this memo was written by an employee who is accountable only to city council. Is the city attorney on the list of possible witnesses? If she is, then she cannot be allowed to recommend the parameters of the investigation. It is a clear conflict of interest. Secondly, I think the most important question is whether or not this investigation will get us any closer to the truth. If the guidelines of the memo are followed, we will never obtain answers to such questions as, what were the circumstances under which Mr. Slater obtained his driveway, how much did he pay, and why was it such a closely guarded secret? Was Mr. Slater the councilman cited in the federal sentencing memorandum as having knowledge of Brian Kishnick's free driveway? Was it Mr. Slater who arranged the favor for a local judge to ensure that her son wasn't prosecuted for buying drugs and lying to the police? When and for how long did Brian Kishnick stay at Mr. Henderson's house after Mr. Kishnick was served with divorce papers after his wife caught him cheating on her with his assistant? Mr. Henderson, look at me when I'm talking to you, sir.
I don't have to.
Was Mr. Henderson at the Christmas party where Mr. Kishnick took bribes? And how did he come to be at that party? Did Mr. Pennington ever attend one of those notorious Kishnick parties where the city contractors were forced to sponsor all the food and drink? Those are just a few of the questions I have, but I'm sure I could come up with more. I only have 3 minutes to speak. My belief that this investigation, as set forth in the memo, isn't interested in the truth. It's interested in hiding the complicity of men who ignored everything they knew about Brian Kishnick. And before Mr. Slater or Henderson complain about the potential cost of this investigation, I would remind them that obtaining the truth can be easy or it can be expensive. Truth is expensive when you need a formal legal process for obtaining it. Lawyers are expensive. But we could have the truth for free, should Mr. Slater and Mr. Henderson choose to tell it. But Mr. Slater is well aware of his right to remain silent. And Mr. Henderson isn't interested in telling the truth. He'd rather be mayor. Your lies insult us all.
Mr. Haddad, I wish you would have spoke before him. Next, I'll call on Steve Teggy, Troy resident, who wishes to speak also on I-4.
Thanks for having me back.
Good evening.
And take that coin and let's flip it. I wanted to follow up. I'm just going to read. I want to follow up on my comments from the last city council meeting to try to stop the taxpayer-funded investigation train from leaving the station. I want to highlight a few points in reference to this. Number one, investigations create mistrust and unnecessary tension if there is no real crime or issue to be investigated. Basically, it's an investigation in search of a crime. Tell me you don't stress out when a police officer is right behind you on the highway. Even though you've done nothing wrong, there is still palpable stress that you experience. We are going to force the council to live under this kind of stress. This is the kind of thing that keeps someone like me from ever wanting to run for city council. It sets a precedent that the city is so dysfunctional that it can't create change without bringing in an inquisition. Number two, the audit conducted provides a prescription for all the risks that they saw with the tone at the top, even providing a case study and a matrix of issues, a description of those issues, and a recommendation to reduce future risk. This council is a part-time body of decision makers to act on behalf of the stakeholders in the city. The city manager is the executive. The old city manager is gone, and I assume we have a better tone at the top now that we have a qualified and vetted individual serving in this capacity. Last time I spoke about conflict, and it's kind of healthy. I assume there's healthy conflict in this council, as there should be. Diversity of thought is what makes this country great. This investigation indicates to me that it's a method of conflict avoidance. Do we need to hire a neutral third party every time something difficult arises in this city? That's why we elected all of you. Solve those problems. Now that we have a prescription from the audit for fixing these issues, work together to fix it. And then number four, I will also once again mention timing. The timing makes this look more like a political investigation designed to hang a shroud of suspicion over people not named Ethan Baker who are also running for mayor. It looks like taxpayer-funded virtue signaling. As stated earlier, this kind of thing keeps good people from wanting to serve the community and exhausts the everyday citizens who don't have the guts to come up here and talk to you. In closing, I'd like to provide my course of action for dealing with this problem. As a council, agree to review the issues set forth in the audit. It was pretty explicit, especially those highlighted by Mr. Baker as justification for another investigation, and break them down into concrete policy adjustments. Surely you can agree on how to fix the problems. You have a new city manager, which is step one. Now leverage the staff that's all paid full-time to work toward the stated vision of the city. Then produce a report for the taxpayers that shows exactly what steps have been taken to remedy the problems highlighted in the audit. If we can't get this kind of action out of the city council, shall we just hire an outside firm to run our city? So the bottom line is, you have all the info you need to fix the problems. I ask that you fix them, and we move on as a better city with streamlined management and a few $1,000s that will remain in our city's coffers. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up to speak public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. This is an opportunity for council or city administration to respond to comments. Councilman Hamilton.
My laptop went out, so can I just get?
That was my fault. I think I hit.
Oh no, it's okay.
So
That's okay.
hopefully we have juice. I didn't realize there was a button there.
I think that did it. It's coming back. Because he downloaded something online. I didn't have any other comment on that. That's okay. You can do it.
It's amazing where we've gone. You can't do without technology anymore. Does anyone wish to respond to public comment? City Attorney Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to just assure council as well as our citizens that we do have cyber insurance. It is through MMRMA, and as the city's liaison, I make sure that that is included, and it will continue to be included in addition to all the other protections that are set forth in that memo.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments from council? Thank you. There are no postponed items this evening, so we will move to regular business. I-1A, our mayoral appointments. I have one mayoral appointment this evening. I would like to move the appointment of Arjan Thalakalapalli to the Global Troy Advisory Committee as the student intern for the term that expires 7/31/2020.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Pennington that we appoint Arjan Thalakalapalli as the Global Troy Advisory Committee student intern for the term that expires 7/31/2020. Any comment on that appointment? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes, and thank you to Arjan for volunteering to be on that important committee. That concludes the mayoral appointments. I will defer to Mayor Pro Tem Baker for city council appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move to appoint to the Parks and Recreation Board as the Troy School Board of Education Representative Timothy Fulcher for the term expiring July 31st, 2020, and for the terms expiring September 30th, 2022, Julia Baker and Pam Brady.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that we appoint Timothy Fulcher as the Troy School Board of Education rep to the Parks and Recreation Board for the term that expires 7/31/2020, and Julia Baker and Pam Brady to the Parks and Recreation Board for the terms that expire 9/30/2022. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Thank you to those that have volunteered to be on that important committee. I-2A, our mayoral nominations. I don't have any this evening. Any city council appointments? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move to nominate to the Parks and Recreations Board as the student representative for the term expiring July 31st, 2020, Divya Agarwal. And might as well do them together, if that's okay. As the student representative to the Traffic Committee, I'd like to nominate for the term expiring July 31st, 2020, I'll nominate Alankar Shendi.
Support.
By Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Pennington, that we nominate the student interns to the boards and committees that were placed into record by Mayor Pro Tem Baker. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Does that conclude the City Council? That concludes the nominations for this evening, so we will move to regular business. Before we get to item I3, I would like to propose a waiver of the rule number 7 to move forward I5, which is the Beaumont Healthy Committee's initiative. We have some representatives from Beaumont Hospital here that would like to do a presentation, and if we could get them in front of I3 and 4, I think it would be best for us. And I would also like to include I6 to move that forward also before I3.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker that we waive Rule 7 so that we can move forward I5 and I6 before I3 and 4. Any discussion on the waiver? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. I would like to move I5 and I6 in the council agenda before I3 and I4.
Support.
It's already done.
It's
The
already
waiver,
done?
the waiver took care of that.
Okay.
Take it back.
We take that back. Okay, so I will call I5, which is the Beaumont Healthy Communities Initiative. Cindy Stewart, our Community Affairs Director, will introduce this item along with our special guests from Beaumont Hospital. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. With me tonight, I have Kyra Boggs, Jeanette Driver, and Nicole France Ellis, and they have a brief presentation about Beaumont Healthy Communities. 14 communities in the Metro Detroit area have already received this designation, and we are hoping that City Council would approve Troy to become a Beaumont Healthy Community. So I don't know who's going to go first, but we have the...
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Dr. Kyra Boggs, and I'm in front as a representative of Beaumont Health. It is really our goal and belief to make Troy one of our next healthy communities. We feel that the city and the residents, as well as the businesses, the schools, additional to nonprofits, are just ready for this aspect. As Cindy said, that we do have this already in 14 other communities with a goal of additional in the counties of Wayne and pushing more into Oakland as well. So each of you should have received a number of packet of information about what healthy communities are, as well as the process for getting it started. But I will also just state for the record is that our goals is to be able to have a memorandum of understanding amongst our organization as well as the council. But Nicole France Ellis here, she will be the person who will be the forefront of this aspect if it is signed and voted upon tonight. So she will be your liaison person, and I will let her take it away from here.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, thank you for having me. So I just want to give a little bit of background on Beaumont before we get started into the healthy communities. Sure, that one, okay. So as you can see, we have grown a lot throughout the 3 counties. All the H's are our hospitals, so we are looking to bring more of that community work. In the North region, we are very strong in that southern region from our Oakwood legacy. So this is a little bit of that outline where Beaumont now is. 8 hospital campuses, 145 outpatient locations. We are expanding. We're getting a lot of urgent cares around the area, so we're trying to grow our presence in the community as well as our hospitals. So our vision for Healthy Communities is to support and promote health and wellness and the lifestyles in our community. So everything we do is to get our community members active and healthy. So a little bit of background on our Healthy Communities. It started in 2013 with our Community Health Needs Assessment, and then again in 2016. We are wrapping up our third round for 2019, and that is meeting with tons of stakeholders in the community members, nonprofit groups, anyone and everyone that wanted to come and give us their input on what they see as a need for the community and the health. So this has been a long process, and we're excited to get the new CHNA plan up and running for 2020. So our priority needs that are currently being addressed from those selected categories from the 2016 is obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. In addition to those three, we will be adding on a fourth measure, and that will be on mental health. So we will still be focusing on those three coming up in 2020, in addition to the mental health, which came out of our new needs assessment. So our communities, we understand each community is different, their needs are different, their priorities are different. So we set these healthy communities up to meet your community need. What does your community want? What is going to fit here? So we create a coalition of community members, of local businesses, of nonprofits, of the schools, the government, city officials. So we create strategies on how we're going to do that as a team. Beaumont is behind it to help lead it, but we're not the only ones doing it. We really want to take the community and have them give back to themselves. So currently right now, we did mention we have 14 healthy communities. As you can see, they're all listed. So we have our Grosse Pointe area, Harper Woods, Farmington, Farmington Hills, Taylor, Trenton, Dearborn, Wayne, and Westland. So those are our current ones, and we are looking to expand into Oakland and Macomb counties. So our initial support in the community is, right now you have a Healthy Communities Project Manager, which is me. I'm out and about doing a lot of chronic disease management prevention. We currently run diabetes programs. One is a 6-week and one is a year-long program. We do cooking matters for adults, for diabetes teens, and in the store. We do tons of health screenings at health fairs. We have groups, walking groups out there. We have a CARE app for Beaumont Gets Walking in the community. They get gift cards for local areas in the community just by walking. And then we have health education through Speakers Bureau. So we have health professionals that go out and give health topics on their specialty for different community organizations and wherever they're requested at. So our framework, we know that people preventing disease helps them live longer, live healthier lives, and we know a lot of that comes outside of the hospital. So we want to help keep people healthy when they're not able to go visit their doctor. We know it's really hard to get in to see their doctor, and so we want to be there for them to have healthy resources to keep their lives living longer. So we address this by implementing a place-based initiative. So we come into the community, the entire community is involved. We like to have a partnership with a location where we can hold our coalition meetings. We have it at times where majority of the community can come to, so whether that's a morning, an afternoon, or an evening coalition meeting. And we do, as Kyra mentioned, sign that MOU through the mayor, the city council, the superintendent. We like everyone on board, so we're all working together. This is just a little mock-up of what this could look like for your community. This gets created based on the coalition input. So we do asset mapping. We figure out what are the needs that Troy would be looking for. So we could do a healthy schools work group, a healthy at play, healthy transportation, healthy at work, or healthy foods. These are things that have come out of coalitions, and we are always open to finding new ones that are going to help support your community most. So with that, that's a brief synopsis of what healthy communities are. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councilwoman Abraham?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. Community health is literal and figurative. The healthier your community is literally, the healthier it is figuratively, and can truly act as one community. I see that you've added mental health as one of the areas of focus based off the most recent survey. I'm curious, given the nationwide and statewide prevalence of opioid addiction, where that fell in terms of the survey results and how that could possibly be incorporated into a community health program.
Yeah, so the mental health aspect of it is very new for Beaumont to be tackling, and that was a high need, the opioid abuse. And so we are looking already at what community partners are already doing that work to help bring them to the table to help move those issues forward.
Fantastic, thank you.
Any other comments, questions from council? I know I had the opportunity to meet with Beaumont Health 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think it was, to kind of get this initiative going, and I think it's just a great idea. I was asked by Beaumont Hospital to participate in the needs assessment, and I found that very interesting and very rewarding also. So I want to just thank Beaumont and Beaumont Health for bringing that to Troy, making us maybe the biggest city that's going to participate in this, and I know that's probably a big challenge for you, but I certainly want to say thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our city, and I look forward, hopefully, to signing the MOU and getting this thing going. I know we talked a few weeks ago about having a quick start, and I think we're having a quick start.
Yes.
So thank you
We're
so much.
We're excited. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to move I-5, Beaumont Healthy Communities. Resolved that the Troy City Council hereby approves the partnership and ongoing working relationship between Beaumont Health and the City of Troy for the Beaumont Healthy Communities program. Be it further resolved that the Troy City Council hereby authorizes the mayor to sign the memorandum of understanding between Beaumont Health and the City of Troy to establish the Healthy Communities Partnership.
Support.
You.
I think that was several of us.
Okay, moved by the chair and supported by all council. Any other comments? Once again, I just want to say thank you for allowing us to be partners with you. And just so everyone knows, our city attorney, Lori Bloom, reviewed the MOU, and she's fine with that MOU, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, and I look forward to the next step. Thank you. Next is I-6, a standard resolution 1, 2, and 3, a special assessment for paving of the portion of Troywood, Section 22. I see Nino Licari, our city assessor, is ready for a presentation. Good evening, Nino.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. And in case you forgot, I am Nino Licari. It's been quite a while since I've been up here. Just a quick overview of the special assessment process. It's spelled out in the charter and by ordinance. This particular case, we're going to try and pave the center portion of Troywood Street. As you can see, it's initiated by a property owner in the district. They go to the engineering department. There's a mail poll that's completed to see if we have more than 50% of the people that are interested in the project. That did happen. We met with the residents on June 27th. Mr. Hootery, Mr. Cicchetti from his office, and myself. They explained the scope of the work. I explained how the special assessment process happens, and then they're given petitions. The petitions are like any other petition that you have to file. They have to be notarized at the clerk's office. You have to verify the signatures. I certify that petition. We had slightly more than 54% of the owners of the property in this area of Troywood that wanted to be special assessed for asphalt paving. I mean, it could be a sidewalk project, it could be water, it could be sanitary sewer. This one is for asphalt paving. We have already paved the west and the east ends of the street, so the center is kind of just dirt still. The way that process works is the special assessment, if approved by council, that would happen at a future meeting. If approved by council, it's a 10-year payment plan at 6% interest. There's no prepayment penalty. They can pay it off at any point in time. They can carry it out for the full 10 years if they'd like to do that. It would become a lien the day that the project is approved by council. So on September 23rd, if you approve this project, it would be a lien on the property. And should a property sell in that point in time, the city gets their money up front from the proceeds of the sale. In this particular instance, the cost of the project is a little better than $373,000, of which the city's paying about $199,000. Troy's special assessment process is very, very generous. The residents are going to be assessed $174,700. That's basically for the asphalt itself. The city takes care of all the other costs. There are many other communities, I don't want to name anyone, where the residents bear 100% of the cost. The other thing about a special assessment for asphalt paving is once we put that paving in, the city takes care of the maintenance for it forever. We don't go back and special assess anyone when we have to repair it or if we have to replace it. It becomes the city's property and we maintain it at that level. The first bill, should the process go through, comes a year after council approval. So if you would approve it, assuming we have a shovel in the ground, if you approve it on September 23rd, the first bill for the project would come the next September 23rd. Now, this particular part of the process, you have standard resolutions 1, 2, and 3. They're presented at one time. That's by charter and by ordinance. Standard resolution 1 and 2 basically approve work that Mr. Hootery and I have already done. They approved the cost estimate for the project. They approved the special assessment roll and the amortization schedule. And then standard resolution 3 sets the public hearing. By charter and by ordinance, with the 54% majority, they've met the standards. And realistically, these 3 resolutions should pass in order to move the project forward. On September 23rd, the other owners or the people that are in favor or against can come to the council meeting, state their objections or their approval to the project. Should anyone come to this table and remove themselves from the list, someone who's already said, yeah, I want this, and we drop below 50%, then it's up to you to decide whether to go forward. You have the authority to go forward without a 50% majority. We have never done that here. If they don't have at least 50%, the council has not approved a special assessment. So barring any questions you might have about the specifics, there's a lot of information here. You're going to get the same packet in 2 weeks. The only other thing it'll have is a certification of the roll. So I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions from council for Mr. Licari. Councilman Henderson.
Just a point of interest for me would be if somebody were to sell their house in the next 3 months, they would still be responsible for
Yes.
that? What if they dropped off the list and brought that number down below?
They have to do it on the 23rd, okay. So then they would be outside of that frame and probably would kill the project. I mean, this is a pretty thin margin here, 54%.
Okay. Not that would happen. I just
stranger things have happened.
Any questions? Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious, how is it that Troywood ended up being paved on both ends and not paved in the middle?
This also has happened before, not often. On the east end, a new subdivision went in about 300 feet in. And in order for the developer to develop that land, we made him pave the street up to it. And on the west end, it's just at the end of Jennings and a little bit west of there, there were 4 houses and a developer built 3 homes on there, and he wanted asphalt paving because he couldn't sell the houses. So he had a 75% majority, so we paved basically in front of 4 houses is what we did. And in years past, this is the 3rd time that this project has come forward on Troywood. Had failed the last 2 times. It never got to this stage where it went to council. Been a little turnover. A couple newer people want to have the asphalt on their street.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Nino. My question is, and this will come up in 2 weeks, assuming this passes, but the yeses make up the 54%.
Yes.
Are the blank ones necessarily no's, or are those people who didn't respond or sign? I mean, is that?
Well, they were all approached. I mean, they were all approached, and the thing, if you don't want a special assessment, you don't sign the petition. So, and they're very vocal, and I understand. You'll also notice those are some of the largest lots in there, and they would have the largest special assessment out of all these people that are in this project area.
Because it's total square feet, or
It's
total area,
lineal
not
feet.
just-
It goes by lineal feet in the front. It's not a standard, in a standard subdivision, all the lots are assessed the same. Since the width of these lots varies so much, you assess it on a front foot basis, which is just less than $75 a front foot.
Councilman Henderson?
One more question. There's, I can't see the lot from here.
The one that's not in?
Yeah, the one that's not in, is that addressed on the?
Well, the issue there is that he can't get a driveway onto Troywood, and his garage is technically on, I think that's Bristol right there. So there's no benefit to him to have paving in front of his house because he can't use it. He's got to drive onto Bristol to get into his garage. And the way the house is centered, when they put Bristol through there, he became a non-conforming lot, so he doesn't even have enough room to put a driveway on either side of his lot. So there's no benefit to him to have the paving at that point in time.
And the others on the other side of Troywood?
Those ones already have paving on the north side, yeah. Yeah, now we've got the big map up.
Councilman Pennington?
Nino, good to see you. Quick question. The smaller lots, let's just say one of those is a hardship case and, they can't afford it. Is that 6%? Is that a going rate, or is that, where do we get that number from?
Right now, that's in the ordinance. The thing to keep in mind, well, there's two things. We used to be able to give them community development block grant funding to cover the cost of their special assessment. Those rules have changed at the county level. We're not allowed to use that money for paving anymore. So right now, we have no means to pay for a special assessment for someone who has a hardship. Oh God, what was the other part of the question?
That was it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I had. I'm getting older now.
Any other questions? Thank you, Nino.
Thank you.
Somebody like to move the resolution? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
So I'll move I-6, Standard Resolution 1, 2, and 3, Special Assessment for, I don't know, bituminous paving of a portion of Troywood, Section 22, as printed.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Hamilton that we approve I-6, which is the Standard Resolution 123, as printed in the agenda packet this evening. Any further discussion? And this sets up a public hearing for the next council meeting where there'll be an opportunity for residents to come forward and speak if they wish. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, Nino and staff. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes. Next on the agenda is I3, which is a request for closed session. I would like to amend this resolution to separate the items for a couple of reasons. One is that one of the closed sessions requires a majority vote, and two of the requests involve a supermajority vote. So I'm going to ask, be it resolved, that the Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 15.268C for the TFSOA only. Do I have to ask to amend that first?
We need a resolution to separate all of the requests, since it was on the agenda all as one. We just separate them. So one resolution to separate everything, and then each one separately.
I'll move the resolution to separate the resolution one from the other two.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Henderson that we separate the resolution as indicated. Any discussion on that?
Does it have to be three? Is it A, B, and C, or is it?
The way it was moved was to have one vote on the TFSOA item and then a second vote on the remaining two other.
The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
No.
Councilmember Hamilton?
No.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
No.
Motion fails.
So then it would be all three in one.
If somebody moves the resolution. Does somebody want to move that? Councilman Baker?
I'll move I3, be it resolved that Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 15.268C, TFSOA, E, William Miller versus City of Troy, and H, MCL 15.243G.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that we approve I3 as printed in the agenda packet. Question to the City Attorney, if this motion is a 4-3 vote and not a 5-2, does that cover, what does that do for the other two?
Well, subsection C requires only a majority. However, because it's not separated and it is one resolution, if it fails, then does not receive the 5 votes, then it would fail. Then another motion could be moved if you wanted to try and separate C as well afterwards.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
No.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
No.
Motion fails. Once again, I will move a resolution to be it resolved that the Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL .15.268C for the TFSOA contract.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Henderson that we approve the resolution as stated in record. Discussion on that? Vote.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. That motion passes. Next on the agenda is I4, City Council investigation with an introduction by City Attorney Bloom. Good evening.
Yes, Mayor. I have a pretty detailed memorandum that was prepared, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for the City Attorney? Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. At the last meeting, there was discussion about videotaping these interviews. I believe it was Councilman Henderson's request, and the memo identifies some concerns with that approach. In the spirit of addressing the concern that Councilman Henderson had, how would these interviews be conducted? How would they get documented? Could you perhaps outline what might occur?
So it is pretty clear that Nancy Dembinski and mostly any attorney would not want to have them recorded because it does inhibit persons from being candid, and so that would not be something that she would be willing to do, is to have them all recorded. However, she would be taking notes, assuming that you have her do the interviews. She would be taking notes, and then she would take that information, and that would be reduced to a report in the usual scenario. If there is an interest in having sworn statements, I know that was a concern beforehand. Perhaps what could be done is perhaps after the interviews, perhaps affidavits could be prepared, and then those could be signed under oath if that's what you're looking for. So those are a couple of different options that you might have.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. As a follow-up to that, it was my understanding from Councilman Henderson and my initial thought that not all employees be videotaped, but council especially. Maybe I misunderstood what he was thinking about, but would it be possible to have a carve-out? The 7 of us are used to publicly speaking in front of the camera. That's part of what we do. And I think that is more in line with what at least I was thinking as far as having a clear, transparent record of what we're saying. Is it possible to have the 7 of us done in front of the camera, but employees done in a separate manner?
It's not just the person who's being interviewed, but it's also the interviewer. And again, I think that she would not feel comfortable having all of her questions, be recorded. Also, there may be lead-ins to other information. We don't know what form that's going to take. She doesn't know what form that would take, depending on the interviews and what information is revealed in the interviews. So for a number of different reasons, there are a lot of concerns about having the interviews recorded.
Even with previous interviews, I understand the Craig Lang report, those were done with a stenographer. There were transcripts created. Is it your understanding that this person wouldn't even entertain that aspect or do that?
She would not want to be having she would not, first of all, there's an added expense, a significant added expense to do that, and I know that that's not your primary concern, but also, again, when the person knows that every word that they state is being recorded, it's the opinion of many attorneys that they are not as candid and forthcoming, and they're very guarded.
I understand that.
Councilman Pennington.
Expenses is a concern of mine, and just for the public record, what was the approximate expense that they came up with for this? Was it the 4th investigation now?
So it's an approximation. Again, it depends a lot on what is revealed in the interviews, but the amount that we think it's going to be is in I'm sorry, I'm looking for the exact amount. I'm sorry, 25 to 30. Yeah, 25 to 30, and it could be more than that. So would certainly exceed 15,000, and could be between $25,000 and $30,000.
So $25,000 to $30,000, but it could be more.
And that does not include any transcription costs or anything like that. And again, these are just estimates.
Councilwoman Hoderick.
The resolution before us calls for waiving a competitive bid process for what we're trying to do. And, I have to commend City Attorney for this memo and encapsulating really in a snapshot a lot of what has gone on, at least publicly, in terms of our ability as a council to effectively monitor and hold the former city manager, Brian Kishnick, accountable to the plan of action that we had set forth. And I know how much work that must have been, because I had been attempting to do that myself, to really learn from what we've been through. And that's my intent, at least, is to self-reflect as a body, not as individual, coming at us as individuals. As a body, we failed. And understanding that, how that could be, and when we were making such attempts to try to provide the oversight is important to me. It would seem that this memo would be something that could maybe be used to get bids to, we have members of the community who want us to look at this, quite frankly, and we have members that are concerned about another investigation and a cost. It's all over the map. And there isn't a precedent for how a governing body holds itself accountable for the failure to do its job. So it's a difficult discussion. It's creating unnecessary division, I think, being made into an election issue. I don't think we have to be in a hurry to do this, and I'd be interested in maybe some other perspectives on, could we look at sending this out for bid? Certainly this attorney, she had been starting to work on it looks like a whistleblower retaliation complaint. So she had started to do work here and understand, and that complaint ended when we ended up firing the city manager. So I think there's value maybe in some of that beginning discussion she had done and understanding of what was happening. I hate to just throw that out, but if we sent it for bid, maybe that would put us not in a position where we're capriciously spending money, but still taking the time to really reflect on what we can learn from this. That's just one comment. I guess that's not so much a question. I guess it is a question. Could we send this out for bid?
Mayor, yes, you could. Another element, though, that you really should keep in mind is the hourly rate. $200 an hour is what she is willing to do this for the city. And I think it's going to be very difficult to find somebody who is competent and able to do it that will work for an hourly rate that's close to that. But absolutely, you can send it out for bid. That's going to add some time, probably at least a couple of months is my best estimate, depending, of course, on the workload of the purchasing department.
Any other questions for the city attorney? Before I call on Mayor Pro Tem Baker again, any other council member? Councilman Anderson.
Just to clarify the on-camera situation, we've already had several investigations, if you want to call it that, and then opinions printed, and that's what we get into. That's how we get into problems. When somebody says something and notes are written, and then somebody has to write a report to present to city council, all of a sudden it's their opinion with zero backup. We don't have the evidence of the actual person stating what they wanted to state and what they really meant. That's why my reluctance to do this without that. I'm not going to have anybody give my opinion about anything. I'm going to give my opinion about things. So I will flat out refuse to do this if it's not on camera, so that everybody can look at it in review and say, yeah, okay, I guess he did say that or he didn't say that. So that's my reservation. I understand that employees might be reluctant to give that testimony, but with the Craig Lang report specifically, we have fixed a lot of things since that Craig Lang report. and that's all outlined in this memo that the city attorney spent so much time putting together, including our whistleblower process. So we have the mechanism in place for people to be able to come forward and give their, express their concerns over any individual within the city, including city council. So for us to keep going down that rabbit hole 3-4 times now to try to get more people to say, you know, whatever it is that, whatever boogeyman that we're chasing right now for political reasons, and it's not a conceived or a pretend political reason. This is a political year, and this is being used as a political tool. I just don't, I don't see that we need to spend that kind of money to fund somebody else's campaign. And I am not in favor of this whatsoever. Again, I'll go on camera and answer any question. In fact, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions here. I'll answer every one of these questions on camera. And these are the questions that the attorney had indicated that may be of interest to the people. I have no problem answering any one of those questions on camera. The very last paragraph in this, I think it's the last one. No, second to last page. Page number 5, the last paragraph. And I'll read it. It says, when discussing this potential engagement, Attorney Dembinski wondered if it was most beneficial to shift the focus from the discussion of past behaviors and instead offer opportunities for each interviewee to offer potential revisions to city policies or procedures or practices that could assist in preventing repeat occurrences. And I think we've addressed a lot of those things. And just in the past 3 years, as we muddle through this Brian Kishnick situation. And if we haven't already taken care of all those things, certainly Mark Miller has been looking at the Plant Moran report and has been making changes as well to policy. Am I out of line saying that, or is that a correct statement?
Yes, we started working on it.
So again, I don't know what the effect is. I don't know what you're chasing. But I'm not in favor of spending $30,000 yet again for another opinion piece from another firm to tell us what a bad guy Brian Kishnick is. He's in prison. So.
Okay, this is an opportunity to ask questions of the city attorney. Of course, that would include the 6-page letter that she, before we get to the resolution. Normally, we move a resolution to get it on the table for discussion, but I think it's appropriate to have a discussion on the letter that was introduced by the city attorney, if that's okay.
I defer to you.
Councilman Pennington.
I have one more question before discussion. Just curious, I know we've spent a lot of time and effort so far on this, City Attorney Bloom, but also, Mark, we didn't get the agenda review out early because of one agenda item. Was this the agenda item that was taking extra time with city staff?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll own up to that.
So there's a lot of internal time. I mean, you know, your time is valuable also. So, you know, we have to put a dollar figure on that. It's not just what we're going to, you know, this $25,000, $30,000 that we're going to spend over and above. We're also talking about a lot of time and effort spent by city employees, and that is not free either.
I think as a follow-up to that question, do we know how much has been spent on Mayor Pro Tem Baker's and Councilman Hamilton's resolution from last?
If you know the exact numbers and time, please tell us.
I do not. Yeah. I do not know the exact number.
Would it be safe to say it was around $5,000?
I'm a little uncomfortable. I think that's probably close, but I don't have a.
I'm just looking for. I've had many residents ask me how much we spent since the last resolution to this in 3 weeks. What have we spent?
How many, Mayor? How many residents?
Many.
Can I ask my question now, since I've skipped a couple times?
Councilman Hamilton?
I just find it interesting that there's all this concern here, but when we were asked if we want to pay over $100,000 to the former financial director, the 3 of you voted for that without a single objection or word or public statement. It's just interesting how selective you are in your wanting to review when we spend money. It's just telling.
Nothing to do with that.
Apples and oranges. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. City Attorney Bloom, my question, did you reach out to anybody else other than this attorney for this proposal or for these thoughts, or was this where you thought your best focus should be with her?
This is where we thought the best focus should be. I would also indicate that Attorney Stacy Belisle is also provided great assistance and was very helpful in this. And, you know, again, we have used her before. You need to have somebody who has done investigations before. You want to have somebody who is experienced as an employment law attorney and has the respect of the community. So she met all of those criteria.
And are we doing comments now without having anything on the table? Is that what we're doing?
We're doing it on the letter. Comments on the letter.
Okay, I'll comment on the letter, if I may.
Pardon me?
I'll comment on the letter, if I may. I think it's a very well-written memo, and I appreciate the time and energy you put into it. And if it took you an extra day to get it out to us, when for years that's when we got the agenda anyway, I'm not sure that's made a huge difference in the timing. But I thank you for that. I think that, like Councilwoman Hoderick said, it is difficult to put together all of the different pieces that have come out over the past few years, whether it's the sentencing memo, whether it's pieces of the Plan Moran report or the Craig Lang report. So I'm sure that did take a lot of your time. I appreciate that we have you on staff to do that for us, and I'm sure it was not easy because you also lived through these experiences, not from an outside place, but actually in the middle of all of it. So I'm sure it brings up a lot of if I can say, feelings for you in the process. Whether or not you'll admit that, I don't know. But thank you. I think that, again, it lays out things very clearly as to why there are still issues that need to be looked at in this city. I think that it's been said a couple times tonight, and the memo itself talks a lot about Brian Kishnick, and we are all painfully aware of Brian Kishnick's conduct, his behavior, his attitudes, his eventual imprisonment. That's where he is right now. And my initial focus of my resolution was not about Brian Kishnick. It was about those of us at this table who may or may not have participated either willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly in creating that culture of complicity. And I don't think it just stops at giving him a raise after a year, not only looking at him 11% of the time from a performance standard in the year prior to his termination. I don't think that's what culture of complicity means. I also hear from many people in the city, and certainly we hear from different groups of people at different times. We've talked about that before, and I can understand that there are people in the city who think this is absolutely wild and crazy, and the worst thing we should be doing. And I respect those opinions, and I've talked to several people who have that opinion. I've also talked to several more who have a very different view of it and who commend us for even taking the opportunity to look at this. My initial idea, as the letter has, is to look at council's conduct. Some of those bullet points are put in through here as to what we should be looking at. I don't know if those are perfect and encapsulate everything. But there are questions that need to be answered. And there is probably no perfect way to do that. I agree with Councilman Henderson that having someone take notes in a private room and then putting out their interpretation of those notes could get us into trouble. I don't think that's necessarily wise, and I understand also that certain city employees may not want to be on camera and that the interviewer may not want to be on camera. We are public officials, and what we do and say needs to be stated publicly. And at this point, after having taken quite, as he's referred to it, a beating over this time over Brian Kishnick, I completely understand where Councilman Henderson's coming from. And if I were him, I would not want to have someone else put my words out there without them coming from my mouth. in a video. So I get that and I respect that and I agree with that. The timing, Councilman Abraham mentioned at the last meeting that had the Plant Moran report come out in February, maybe the timing would have been a little different. We wouldn't be coming up to an election that I never talk about from this table, but 3 others seem to bring up at every possible opportunity. So it's always curious to me who's really making it about a political issue. If you read the memo, if Nancy, the attorney, does it, it probably wouldn't be completed for 3 to 4 months, and that's 1 to 2 months after the next election. So I don't see that as being so much of an issue. I hear what Councilwoman Hoderick has mentioned about putting it out to bid. I also understand, as I recall from in previous times when we actually hired McGraw, the firm, McGraw Morris, yeah, that getting a discounted hourly rate is a huge thing, and $200 an hour, while that is a lot of money, it's probably a very competitive hourly rate for something of this nature. So putting it out to bid may not be the best thing either, although it would provide the city and all of us an opportunity, or some of us, I guess, if it comes out after November, whenever that is, to look at the facts and see who else is potentially interested in doing something like this, at what cost, and what the best course may be. Your letter and your memo, I'm hoping a lot of people in our community read it and look at it. I think it includes absolute brilliant synopsis of some of these issues. It really does. And when I talk to people in the community that think that we're making up some of these things or talking about these things as if we're just doing this for whatever nefarious reason, they're not realizing there was a sentencing memorandum that quotes specifically certain conduct. There have been other reports that specifically talk about conduct. So I, again, appreciate how much this makes clear why I think we should be doing what we're doing, or why I think we should do what I think we should be doing. So I understand where everyone else is coming from. I'm fully prepared tonight to discuss the cost if that's what we need to do, why or why not that's in the best interest of the city. The timing, I mean, let's have the honest discussion. We don't want to go to closed doors anymore, apparently, so let's have these public conversations and do what's good for the city and try to find a way to move forward in a positive way while looking at the conduct that's happened in the city that made it what it is today.
Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one last question. If this were to go out to bid, do you believe that Ms. Dembinski would be one to bid or participate in the bid process?
We would certainly give her that option and certainly present her with the bid specifications, yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Pennington.
Just to rebut part of what Councilman Baker talked about, I brought it up with the timing for City Manager Miller and City Attorney Bloom because that was just that was the idea that I'd gotten from the memo that was sent out that was taking their staff longer, and since this fourth investigation has been proposed, I've done some investigating of my own, so I'm talking to city employees, and this talk of a fourth investigation is destroying morale in City Hall, as far as the two employees that I talked to. So just to, it's just not just the word in the city from city residents, it's also City Hall, so for what it's worth.
Councilwoman Hoderick.
Taking a really good look at the memo that you provided to us, it brought back to mind, I'm seeing where we failed even laid out in here. I'm also seeing, and I'm struck by the list of activities that were in the U.S. Attorney's sentencing memo, and recognizing at that very time frame in that early 2018 and actually the end of 2017, we had been talking about ethics and internal controls here. And at the very beginning of February 5th, we rebolstered our view on ethics, added some requirements that were to apply to city and to city council, including the ICMA tenants and MML, even though that we as individuals aren't members of the ICMA, that would be a professional organization the city manager is a member of. Looking to what those tenants are, if he's held to it, we should help him hold to it. And I guess if we were going to proceed with doing anything, the investigation to me isn't about our city employees at this point. There's no question in my mind that they were seeing things, and frankly, there were rumors being spread of things. There was even an attempt to comprehend one of those, and it was ignored. And I can see where that failing is. I would like to document that, and I don't know how, maybe if we're not calling it an investigation, but as I sit here, it is, how do we flesh out the story so that we come out the other end of it as a city and with our reputation, really learning from our mistakes. And when I look at the ethics document that we sign as city council members, I think the question is, did we each hold to that as pristinely as we should have? Maybe unknowingly, some of us didn't. And that self-reflection of looking at that is something to pass on to the next council, the council after that. It can be lessons learned that we share with other cities. And I find myself really just struck by that particular document as I was looking at the activities that went on and the timeframes and the attempts that we were trying to make from here. And I guess that brings to mind the ICMA, MML. I don't think there's precedent. We have a body. At least some of us in this body are interested in holding ourselves accountable. Seriously holding ourselves accountable. How did we fail? What did we do right, maybe, even in that process? But how did we fail to provide the proper oversight of this former city manager? Is there a professional organization or a place we can look to for that besides an investigation? I guess that's another question, and this is coming to mind as I'm sitting here. I apologize that I don't feel like there's a release valve for us to really, truly try to hold ourselves accountable, a way to do it.
Just, again, this is prospectively, not retroactively, but one of the directives that I have is to bring forth some additional options for the ethics policy, and that will be coming to you soon as well. So that is something that, again, prospectively, we're going to provide some options to you as far as what you can do with your ethics code.
And what the consequences are when we don't follow it is also weak in our...
That will be part of the discussion and part of the paper.
Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. The memo makes reference to the tone at the top. And I've heard references to Mr. Kishnick having been the top. Inherently, that's not possible. We are, all 7 of us, this body was his employer. We were his boss. When you look at the hierarchy, it was on top. We were on top. Tone at the top includes us. It doesn't stop at Brian Kishnick. And when you look at the bigger hierarchy, council reports to the residents. That's just how our government is set up. This truly is intended to be what council unknowingly did that bolstered Mr. Kishnick's belief that he could do anything. I do not accuse anyone at this table of a crime. That's not what this is about. This is understanding how we may have unintentionally made this man feel like he could do anything and get away with it, and have that tone cascade down to employees who had many difficult years coming into work every day. So the tone at the top does include council, and we got to understand so that we can do better in the future. I might not be sitting at this table for much longer, I don't know. But I want future councils to not have to grapple with what we're grappling with. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I truly wouldn't. But we need to understand what went wrong, because we can't fix what we don't understand. I don't think there was intentional abuse. I truly do not think there was intentional abuse from any one of us 7. So let's understand if maybe our behaviors sent a message that helped embolden someone who is now in prison for his actions. We don't want this legacy to remain a stain on this community. We have the power to make this a teachable moment for the community, for the region, for the state. How can we take a bad situation like this and make it so that there is accountability with your local government, whether it's at the state or county or local level? That's what this is about to me. It's not about an election. It's not about spending tax dollars capriciously. It's understanding what the problem was so that we can fix it and fix it appropriately. To me, that's what this is about. So when the tone at the top is referenced, I got to include all of us here at this table in there. And that's not something staff can fix. That's something only council can fix. So I appreciate all the efforts that I know staff is doing to address the more objective recommendations from Platt and Moran. I know that's not a small amount of work, but it is very necessary. And this is the subjective part that only council can fix, and I think we can if we have the will to do it.
Thank you. I'll take a shot here. Councilwoman Abraham, I agree with you 90% of what you said. The part that I don't agree with you is that this is not the way that you do things through witch hunts. The tone at the top does include all of us. There's no question to that. This has been beat and beat and beat and beat. And I can look you in the eye, Mayor Pro Tem Baker, and tell you that I've talked to residents, lots of residents. I've talked to hundreds of employees. I've talked to business people in this city, and not one of them have told me that they don't think this is a political game. Okay? It is an obvious political game. They've said it over and over again that this is a waste of taxpayers' money. Another $50,000 to interview employees that have been interviewed already and have said what the report says. There is not a legal issue here. They did not specify any complaint. It's very easy to take a 6-page report and take sections of it, as attorneys do, and just focus on those and not focus on the entire report. City Attorney Bloom, I agree 100%. I want to thank you for what you've done here. This is an excellent report. It's a good summary. But some council members are taking things out of context, and they're not taking, especially on the first page. And if you don't think that this is for political gain, I don't see why you would do something like this if you really take a look at this report and think that it doesn't say that the City of Troy employees had nothing specific, okay? And I can find references. There have already been investigations completed, and there are sparse references to any potentially adverse actions by city council members which create an even greater challenge to an investigator that's doing this. Having been an investigator for 30 years, I don't know how in the world you would ever investigate this with what you are trying to do here. It's very unfortunate for me that I read in the papers the city of Ferndale is doing such great things, the city of Rochester Hills is doing great things, Madison Heights, they're getting all the nice headlines, and what are we getting? We're getting headlines about investigations, needless investigations, okay? And that's not just my opinion. I'm telling you, I am getting this from most people, everyone that I've talked to, everyone. So if we want to talk about what is the real proof that whether this is a political ploy or not, you knew this was going to be very costly. You knew it was going to be 30, 40, 50,000, maybe more. You knew it couldn't be done in a hurry, which is evidenced in the report that this is going to take 3 or 4 months. You knew there weren't direct complaints. You knew it was sparse references. You're part of a robocall that went out that called out me, Councilman Henderson, made an inference that we're going to be investigated. You put in your political letter that you've initiated an investigation. That's what this is all about. There's no question that that is what this is all about. We've tried to move forward. It's been such a struggle trying to move forward when all we do is keep getting thrown back into the mud. So until we want to really focus on the future and really focus on the good of this city and the great part of this city, that's what everybody tells me they want to see happen here. They want to see us move forward. They want to see us be positive. They want to see that Troy is a great place. I talked to Mr. Haddad recently, and I think that's what he wants to talk about tonight, what a great city this is. Not see headlines in our local papers about another costly investigation. It's just very disappointing for me that I have to spend my last 6 weeks having to deal with something like this instead of really reflecting on what really good has been done in this city, except for this one guy that should be the guy that's held responsible, okay? You shake your head and you say no, but that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. So you can pass your resolution. I'm sure you probably have your 4 votes, to get your resolution passed and spend $50,000 out of the taxpayers' money. But I'm going to tell you, it's going to backfire on you. It's going to backfire. Councilman Hamilton.
what's interesting is the same 6-page memo that you just quoted from has a quote from the former finance director who you were willing to pay over $100,000 to with his release, which the 4 of us rejected. It says the finance director's statement, "In my mind, I'm pretty assured that certain council members knew of this stuff going on. I knew the council pretty well, and you know what? They didn't have a problem with it. The tone from the top, it's part of doing business. I feel my observations were correct as they did nothing after the Lang report. At the end of the day, if he didn't hang himself, he'd still be here." Well, that to me is evidence that needs to be investigated.
We know that's not accurate because we did do something after the Lang report. And that's indicated in this report also.
Which failed miserably when he was committing crimes as documented in this report, crimes and unethical behavior from the moment that report was released in 2016. He was living in Somerset Apartments, getting a free apartment right when that the Craig Lang investigation was completed. He was immediately violating the proposed plan of action you provided. So the council's job of oversight, one of council's primary roles here, the primary role, is oversight of the city manager, and he was immediately failing after that. So I think it was accurate. You had words, you had a plan, but it means nothing if he was immediately committing crimes after that. So no, you did virtually nothing. You did boilerplate text that had no teeth. He continued to have a reign of intimidating employees, breaking the law, and breaking ethical violations constantly while you were supposed to be supervising him. So at the very best interpretation, you were failing in your role very badly of supervising this criminal. So I disagree with what you said.
So when you say you, are you referring to just me or the whole
council? As a whole. Council as a whole. Fair.
Well, if you read the memo also, the memo says that we had no knowledge of anything that was going on. In fact, the internal investigation that was going on that cost $5,300, the council was not aware of that. And had we been aware of that, things might have been different, okay? So we can sit here and beat this up, and we can beat it and beat it and beat it to make it a political issue, or we can move forward like all the employees want to do. Councilwoman Hoderick.
Part of what is very difficult about this is the information that can be public that we can talk about, and information that is closed meetings and we can't.
Love to.
My personal experience here, when information was discovered, was not one that I would wish on anyone. Information brought up was discounted and deflected. And in a sense, that was at the root of what helped foster the culture that we're trying to get at. Just listening and feeling this dialogue here tonight, I can feel we have different leadership styles, we had different expectations. For some of us, the bar was on one level, and for some of us, it was at a different level. I would very much love to move on. I can't wait till this era is behind us. There are spheres of people that give some of us input. There's spheres of people that have very different views than what you just conveyed. Very different views as they're trying to figure out who to trust. My sense is that we could send this out to bid. The spirit of cooperation and the intent, as Councilwoman Abraham described it, which is to learn from it, I'm not sure we'll get there. I hate that this happened on my watch. It shouldn't have happened. It didn't need to happen. It could have been prevented. So help me, what I was trying to do is take this cloud and find the silver lining and learn. If we don't have our ethics and integrity intact, that's a serious issue in a city. So I guess the election issue is that our bosses, the residents of this community, have to really think about the tone at the top that came at us and the instructions we had from a forensic audit, and help whatever elected body is sitting here to embrace that tone constructively, pragmatically, and with a vigor with people who lead in a high-quality way. The city deserves that. This is an amazing city, filled with amazing, high-quality, professional people doing amazing things. To be criticized, to want to fiercely protect that, is beyond frustrating. I appreciate the employees bearing with us as we are cleaning up our side of cleanup on aisle 5 here. The staff has been through a lot. I agree, Mayor, that I agree with you that there are employees that just really want to move on. We are accountable, and we failed. I own that. I will sit here and own it all day long, and I wanted to understand that failure, learn from it as a body. That was my intent here. And to have it characterized as something else speaks volumes, I would think.
Councilman Henderson?
Sure, there are eight items on page 4, continuing on to page 5, including the apartments and monies paid by a contractor for lunches, dinners, and so forth. And these are all things that the FBI ferreted out. I didn't know about any of that. Had we known about any of that, it would have been a completely different conversation. So the assertion, I guess I have to ask Councilman Hamilton, how am I supposed to know if Mark Miller, for example, is living anywhere? I don't have that level of detail on Mark Miller's personal life. I didn't have that level of detail with Brian Kishnick's personal life. A friend of mine and I were talking about this entire situation because it comes up in many, many conversations. And, you know, he said, in effect, we were conned by a con man. And the tone at the top is certainly an issue. But is it not conceivable to all you people that the tone at the top was Brian Kishnick? He was the top guy. We weren't here. We weren't here daily to watch what went on between him and employees. I never once saw him dress down an employee, yet that was addressed one time in the Craig Lang report. The third paragraph on page 1, and Mayor Slater already referred to this, but there have already been investigations completed, and there are sparse references to any potentially adverse actions by city council members. I don't know how much more plain that could be. We are a part-time body with the responsibilities of a full-time manager for our city manager and our city attorney. And I vow, if I'm so fortunate to be elected in November, to try to repair that. That's what the disconnect for me is. How do we, as a body of 7 with full-time jobs, most of us, hire somebody and then have the responsibility to manage them with the minutia that it would take to know all of those things in those 8 bullet points. Some of them, sure. I mean, maybe we could have stumbled on something or whatever, but that is a broken situation for city council and city manager. Our form of government has a glitch, and yes, we can fix that. And I do claim, I'll claim that as a responsibility because I was on council for 8 years. I was on the council that hired him. And, you know, for a couple years, he did some really, really good things. And we gave him some latitude. We gave him some plans. They're all outlined in this memo. And again, thank you, Lori, for putting so much time and effort into this. This body of work here is an accumulation of about 4 years of things that happened within the city. So, you know, can we do better? Yes. How do we go about doing better when we have a direct report that none of us see on a daily basis? You know, we don't know what Mark Miller is doing outside of the 2 hours, 3 or 4 hours that we get to see him on every other Monday night. We're not here. And yes, we can rely on employees, whistleblowing and giving information, but the information that was brought forward to this council, by and large, was not brought forward directly by those employees, other than a couple of interviews by Craig Lang and miscellaneous information that was brought forward by other council members. I don't have those relationships with city employees, so I never got that direct feedback. So yes, is the system broken and can we do better? Absolutely we can. How do we do that? That's the essence of the bottom of page 5. When discussing this potential engagement, Attorney Dembinski wondered if it was most beneficial to shift the focus from the discussion of past behaviors, which would be a really, really good thing for the city of Troy, and instead offer opportunities for each interviewee to offer potential revisions to city policies or procedures or practices that could assist in preventing repeat occurrences. That's policy. That's how do we functionally oversee a manager, all 7 of us, on a daily basis when we're not here on a daily basis. That's the catch bag that we have to try to figure out. It would benefit us and the city wholly if we could try to figure something out there. Going through another investigation and trying to find, again, the boogeyman here is really kind of a fruitless endeavor.
Councilman Pennington.
I just want to touch a couple things. Councilman Holderg, I do agree with you. The employees do want to move forward, but it's not just moving forward. This talk of this investigation, just from the 2 that I took, to say it's destroying morale at City Hall. It's just not damaging it. Destroying morale was the comment that I had from the woman that I talked to. Every citizen that I speak with does not wish to spend one more dime on an investigation. And I think everyone running for office, running for re-election, needs to put that on their flyers that they're supporting this 4th investigation at taxpayers' expense.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Pennington. This would be the 1st investigation into City Council, not 4th. The investigations have focused on Brian Kishnick before, but none of them have looked specifically at council, which is probably why City Attorney's memo states that there were sparse references to council members, because that has never been the focus. As I understand, the focus has always been Brian Kishnick, department heads, city employees, and that would explain why there's sparse references. All of us have heard rumors, probably about each and every one of us, of potential wrongdoing, ethical violations. Some of them we can't talk about. Some of them I choose not to talk about publicly without having a proper look into them, because I think that's irresponsible, as you and I have talked about. I don't think it's right for me to sit here and gossip without having some formal method to do that. I know that's often what it seems like you're looking for me to do so that we can run with that, but my concept here is to do something in a methodical and professional way for the good of the city, for the city employees who, I don't know which two you've spoken to and all that you have spoken to, but I've also spoken from them, heard from them, and they have a very different sentiment to what you both are talking about. We've again talked about that in the past. There's different spheres, different groups of people. I understand that. And no, you're not going to get every city employee to agree or disagree. I have to say, Mayor, you give a great political speech. You did a great job giving a nice political speech on behalf of the person you choose to succeed you. And to laugh at it is, I get it, I get it, but it was, as you do, very well done. You're a very good speaker, there's no question. A couple things that I'd like to just point out about that speech. I haven't participated in any robocall. My campaign hasn't participated in any robocall. So I don't know where that's coming from. I am very proud that I sat up here a couple meetings ago and put forth a council referral to look into city's conduct, whether it's in our city council's conduct, whether it's called an investigation or not. I do think that's an important part of what I've done on city council. Just like Councilman Henderson talks up his effort to reduce marijuana facilities in the city of Troy. We all have our proud moments up here of what we've done, and I have no shame or no problem talking about that in an email, in a letter, up here or anywhere. So I'm proud of that decision, and I don't think that's a problem. I think that's the right thing to do, and I'm very happy with that. I did not come here tonight looking to spend $50,000, $30,000. I came here tonight looking for information which is provided to us. So to say that, you know, I knew that I was going to be doing this and spending this money, it's just not true, Mayor. But again, you did give a great speech, so thank you. I'm still left with all of this conversation tonight and no clear path forward. The mayor's right, 4 of us, if we had the votes, could pass something that 3 will not like. I would still like to think that we could come together with some kind of compromise or something to move forward in a way that does look into our conduct some, does give the citizens, those that do have severe and strong concerns about this, an opportunity to hear from us directly on some of these issues, and to allow us, as this council, as council members, as future council members in future councils, to have something to look back and say, wow, that's what they did wrong, that's what they did right. I'm glad we know that because we're now faced with X, Y, or Z situation in the future. That has been my goal and intent all along with this. I stand by that. I think that we actually have made a lot of progress in just having these conversations over the past couple meetings. Some of you may not like them, and some of you out in the audience may be tired of listening to them. But the reality is, these are the conversations we probably should have had 2, 3, and 4 years ago about Brian Kishnick, about each other, about what we're doing. So I'm sorry for those of you that are not thrilled that they're all getting truncated and put together right now, but there's been a lot of things that have come before us that we need to discuss. I still go back to Councilman Henderson's discussion of doing things in front of the camera for council. That is very important. I don't know if, as a side note, to spend taxpayer dollars to have what ends up looking like a study session on perspective what you can do moving forward doesn't seem like the best thing when a council could sit and have a good conversation and come up with some of those things with city attorney advice. So I do disagree with that paragraph on page 5 a little bit from that perspective. Each and every one of us has our reasons for serving on council, for supporting or not supporting this, if you want to call it an investigation, if you want to call it an ethics probe, if you want to call it a good conversation. Maybe Mr. Teggy would reference it, something like that. I mean, you make good points, Mr. Teggy. The idea is that we should be able to work through some of these issues. What you don't know is that we've tried and it hasn't always been successful. So sometimes you need to have that next step and an additional mechanism to make that work. So that's where I find myself today. And they are conversations that should happen among all of us and publicly, not in groups of 2 or 3, and not in an irresponsible way also. That leads me to the other thing. We all know it's very dysfunctional, and it's what grabs the headlines when we sit up here and throw barbs back and forth. We talk out of turn, we cross-talk, we shake our heads, we laugh, we do things that are not holding ourselves to the highest standards of decorum and conduct at this table. That is what creates negative headlines. That is what makes us appear not as good as we actually are. I'm still stuck with where I was as far as this investigation. The city attorney has put together a proposed resolution that covers much of what I've been talking about for the past few meetings. A question for the city attorney. In your experience, if there was a not to exceed amount included in some of this proposal or in the resolution, how would that be reviewed potentially by the attorney, I forget her last name, excuse me. And do you think that could be, the scope could be narrowed, whether it's from some standpoint to keep costs down?
I've already attempted to narrow the scope to the items that are bullet pointed in the memo. I am a little reluctant to have a not to exceed because you may not get all of the persons interviewed. So I really don't know what it's going to take, and if you really want a thorough investigation, then you may not want to have a not to exceed.
And another question, is it worth exploring whether or not Plant Moran could flesh out what they meant by culture of complicity and why they came to that conclusion? And obviously they'd ask us for more money, I recognize that. If we were to, I'm thinking with the investigative powers, they could be subpoenaed. What are the potential options for getting that information? Because for me, that culture of complicity language comes directly from their report, and it wasn't fleshed out because that wasn't the focus of their report, but that is what has put us where we are today.
I'm sure if council is willing to pay them additional money, that they would be happy to do an additional report for council. I'm not sure that I don't think that they are willing to disclose their notes that they took of each of the interviews, but I'm certainly happy to ask them for additional information. But again, I'm sure that they're going to insist on receiving payment for their services.
Have you had any conversations with them? When they stopped work on that previous report, I know they stopped work because they got to the max amount we had approved. Was it your opinion or understanding that perhaps they had more they could have said had they had more time, or did they stop investigating altogether?
They did stop. I don't know if they had additional information. I think that they've stated in their report that that they did not focus on things that were covered by other investigations. And I've not talked with them since just immediately after the report. I've not talked with Plant Moran.
And in order for you to have that conversation with them, would you need consensus from us? Would be the proper thing to do?
They will, in light of the fact that they received less money than what their hourly input was, and in light of the fact that they took a little bit of a haircut on this engagement, I'm guessing that they will require some funding before they would be willing to spend more time on the city.
Right, but to at least ask them that, do you need consensus from us? I guess that's my question.
I can ask them that, but as far as them doing work or developing a scope or coming up with an estimate, I don't know if they're going to charge us to do that or not. I'm guessing that they may provide that information.
Okay. well, I guess I'd seek consensus from council to at least have the city attorney reach out to Plant Moran and see if that is something that they would be, one, willing to do, two, capable of doing, and three, if they are willing to provide any estimate of costs and any procedural information they could give as to how they would do it, in hoping that they've still kept their notes that can refer to some of those things and maybe flesh those things out further. You've got one head here.
I'm not spending one more dime out of the city's taxpayers' pocket for this witch hunt.
It's not a witch hunt, Mayor.
It's a witch hunt. Councilman Henderson, do you have something to say?
Just a couple thoughts here. First off, I want to go to the Plant Moran situation. If we're going to try to flesh out what their opinion was, and this is exactly an opinion, we would need to see the transcripts, which they've already stated that they will not release. I would think we want to pursue that a little bit further. That would be the next logical step. If there's something in those reports or those interviews that they had with those 16 employees, I think it was 16, that made them write the opinion, then we should be able to see that. Redact the heck out of it so we can't identify who it is, that's fine. But we should see those reports. I think that would be a great first step if we were going to do anything. They've already done that. That shouldn't cost that much more money to do. The focus was on Brian Kishnick because he was the bad guy in all this, just to clarify. And the focus wasn't on city council people. That's not exactly accurate because two of us I know were interviewed by the FBI over the Brian Kishnick situation. So there was already investigation into 2 city council members with regard to Brian Kishnick. An alternate idea, and forget calling this an investigation because I think that, again, this is silly and we won't go over the reasons why, but going again to page 5 at the very bottom, I know you think that's a bad idea, but maybe a good first step is to have our city attorney and our city manager provide us with thoughts on a plan for oversight of their 2 positions. And, you know, that might be asking the fox to watch the chicken coop, but they certainly have seen this from an inside perspective and should be able to provide us with their thoughts on how we could have prevented that situation to occur. And as a body, the 7 of us can add our thoughts and maybe make it more of a constructive conversation rather than a lot of finger pointing and innuendo about who the bad guys here were. Because again, going back to the bad guy, he's serving time. I think it would be more constructive to try to come up with some sort of a plan moving forward as you say the investigation would lead us to, without the finger pointing, without the with the assistance from the city attorney and the city manager to give us some guidance there. My thoughts.
Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to be very careful when we're talking about dollars associated with staff hours on agenda items. There are a lot of agenda items that may look brief but have had a lot of staff hours put into it. So I want to be very careful about how we frame up work that's assigned to staff and what it costs. So that's structural overhead. Staff hours are important, but we need to be very careful that we're not looking at each agenda item and framing it up in terms of just dollars. There's it's a dangerous precedent to start framing conversations that way. I appreciate Councilman Henderson's comments about the suggestion made at the bottom of page 5. What I struggle with is how we can provide potential revisions to policies or procedures or practices when we don't actually know what the issues truly is. What is the root cause? So I would love to be able to do that, but I want to be informed before I provide a potential revision. I think that's the due diligence that is expected of us. I want to maybe provide a little perspective in terms of my worldview on this particular situation. As some people know, I work for General Motors, and 5 years ago there was a very significant ignition switch recall. And as part of that recall, there was an investigation done. And that investigation was led by an attorney, last name of Valukas. You'll hear about the Valukas report. You can go to the NHTSA website, it's on there. This attorney didn't necessarily specialize in automotive. He didn't necessarily specialize in understanding organizational behavior and culture. But what the attorney and his staff did was look at the situations surrounding the recall and came up with conclusions and recommendations. And some of them were quite harsh and unforgiving and frankly very difficult to hear. And one of them was that GM didn't have a culture of safety. And in those 5 years subsequent to that report, there has been active efforts to address that and make sure that a safety culture is in place so that every worker goes home every day, whether you're in a manufacturing site or not. So to me, this is my worldview. And I see the forensic audit in a very similar light to that Valukas report. There were recommendations made, conclusions made, and it's up to us as a body to act on it. That is my worldview, and that's how I'm acting. I'm being consistent with what I have experienced in the public sector. There may be some that argue, oh, well, GM had to do something, or, they would have faced repercussions. Okay, well, we haven't had government oversight on this particular recall, and we did up until about a year or so ago. And that culture, the emphasis on the safety culture exists. We too, as a body, I believe, need to embrace the recommendations in the spirit of how can we do better and be better. Not punitive. This is not intended to be punitive. It is intended to make our government run better. While some people may doubt my motivations, that's truly where I'm coming from. I'm looking at this and trying to be as dispassionate as possible and own that oversight did fail. How did it fail? What was my role in that failure? Because until we understand it, we can't do better. I appreciate all the comments here today. I think maybe the one thing that all 7 of us can agree on is that we're tired of talking about this. We really are. But I want to be very careful about casting aspersions on motivations. I think each of us, and I have relationships with all 6 members up here, and certainly things have been strained from time to time. But I don't doubt your motivations. I don't doubt that you want to do best for the city. I think we all see that a little bit differently on what is best, but I don't doubt your motivations. And I would hope you would not doubt mine. A few meetings ago, I made reference to a quote from Abraham Lincoln. It was from his first inaugural speech. And in his address to the nation, he implored that we are not enemies. We cannot be enemies, even though the bonds of our friendship have been strained. We have been collegial in the past, and we have it in us to be it again. What I'm asking for out of all of us is, as we move forward, no matter how we move forward today, is that we don't doubt each other's motivation or worldview. I think we're all trying to do the best by the city. And while we may disagree, we have it in us to do so respectfully. And the tenor of the conversation at the table can go a long way towards productivity and how we move forward. We are in a very unique position. Again, I wouldn't wish it on any other council or any other governing body. We can make this a positive example on how to address a situation like this, should it ever occur again. We can be an example of what is good and what is right in local government. So we don't even have a motion on the table yet.
No, we don't.
But I would just ask that all of us just take a deep breath, collect ourselves, and treat others as we would want to be treated. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Pennington.
What it comes down to, plain and simple, is that we were conned by a con man. My first conversation with City Manager Miller when he came into his position was, and I'll never forget this, he said, you all were duped, and we were. There were 7 of us that were duped by a con man. And so I disagree with Councilwoman Hoderick. The 6 of us will never get past this. It'll always be over our heads until we're out of this office. There'll always be a cloud of suspicion over the 6 of us because we will always have someone bringing this up. So I agree with Councilwoman Abraham. We just need to figure out, and I've said this a year and a half ago, we just need to figure out how to move forward from this. But spending money on another investigation is not my idea of it.
Okay. Councilman Hamilton.
For the record, Councilmember Abraham was not duped. She was the only council member sitting at this table that agreed to not extend Kishnick's contract and did not give him a raise. So what you said was inaccurate. Councilmember Abraham was not duped by him. So, no.
Well, Councilman Hamilton, you don't know everything that was discussed, right?
Councilmember Abraham does. So.
But you don't.
Okay.
So what you're saying is incorrect.
Right.
What did I say that's incorrect?
You don't know everything that happened in closed sessions.
I never said I did.
Right. So
what did I say that was incorrect?
I can't bring it up because it's set in closed sessions.
We're not allowed to talk about it. I wish we could talk about what happened in closed
There's
session.
a lot of things you don't know. Just leave it at that.
City Attorney Bloom, no, City Manager Miller, how about, maybe I could wake you up a little bit. I can't. I think what's getting lost in the shuffle here is that since you've taken over, you have taken what Plant Moran, their suggestions, and what could be done and what could be better.
Yes.
You've taken what the first investigation concluded, and we've done what the Lang report suggested.
Mm-hmm.
You're moving forward with staff, trying to make sure that things that happened in the Plant Moran report will not happen again.
Yes, we're doing what we call corrective action. And we're actually doing one other thing which I've never really talked about publicly. And Assistant City Manager Bob Bruner has an idea that he thinks would help both the city attorney and I, in that we're looking into hiring someone to help City Council evaluate their 2 direct reports. And we've actually done a little work on that. I don't know if, Bob, you want to talk a little bit about what you've done?
Nothing yet.
Okay. It's just in the really preliminary standpoint.
So, you know, I want the public to know that your office is working diligently to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I think that's important for everyone to know, that things did happen that could be corrected, and I think that's what council wants to also do, is to find a way to make sure that this doesn't happen. And I think the failure, our failure, council's failure, was we asked for monthly reports from both our reports, but we never enforced that. I can't remember the last time we had a monthly report from the city attorney. I can't remember if we've ever had one from Mr. Miller. So yes, we have. But we don't need to spend $50,000 to correct these problems. The voters on November 5th are going to make a decision. And that's who we answer to. Those are the people that we should be paying attention to, and those are the ones that are going to make a decision on November the 5th. And if there's people on council that shouldn't be on council, then that's the process we have. And it's a good process. If they don't like what you've done, if they don't like what we've done, then vote you out of office. We don't need to spend $50,000 of their money on this. It just doesn't make any sense. Let the voters decide who they want up here on this bench here. That's who should be making the decision. The voters of Troy. So, we have a resolution that's on the table. Is somebody that should be on the table, is somebody going to move this resolution tonight?
I did seek consensus to have the question asked of Plan Moran. I don't know if that was ever dealt with.
I'm sorry, was there consensus to spend money and have Plant Moran?
There was no consent. The question was not to spend money. It was to at least inquire of Plant Moran what their process would be and if this was something they'd be willing to flesh out. I think that's a short answer without them billing us for whether or not they would do it.
I think I got the impression from the city attorney that it probably would cost money.
I'd like to know how much, so that question needs to be asked.
I can certainly approach them and ask them if they can provide it to me without charging us, and what the costs would be if they were to do a more detailed analysis, if they were to flesh it out. I can certainly ask them that.
Can we include asking them about the transcripts redacted?
I don't, again, that's their work product, and I would never give my work product, and I'm guessing that they would be have a very similar approach.
Okay, I think there's consensus to do that. I do want to make a point that I've been approached by many employees. I don't know who decides 16 employees got interviewed. I don't know whose that decision was and why they chose 16, but many employees have come forward to me and asked to be interviewed. And I think that if an employee asks to be interviewed, and this goes any further, they should get an opportunity to be interviewed. I don't know why we chose 16, and I don't know really who they are. So that was a request made to me by some employees. So there's a resolution. Is somebody going to move that resolution this evening so that we can find some closure tonight? Councilman Hamilton.
I mean, my current feeling is we don't have closure yet. I don't feel like there's a resolution that a majority is even like ready to agree with right now. I mean, there's a lot of points brought up here, and I don't know if I'm ready. I'm not ready to vote for this as written. I'll say that. So, but I think it needs to be tweaked more. I don't know if we can do that tonight.
Councilman Hamilton. I'm sorry, Ms. Henderson.
We weren't talking about this specific resolution. Okay. We were talking about the resolution or the information that Councilman Baker.
No, we've gone past that. I think there was consensus. There was consensus to ask the city attorney to.
Okay. So we're on to the actual.
We're on to I-4.
Whether we're going to move it or not. Can I say something?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I'm not going to move I-4 tonight. I don't think we're at that place to do it based on the conversation tonight. I'd like to hear back from Plant Moran before I did anything further with this. As it was my initial referral that brought this, I mean, unless somebody else wants to move I-4, I don't think tonight's the night to do it.
Thank you. We've gotten rid of I-5, we've gotten rid of I-6, and we are at the consent agenda. Anyone on council wish to pull a consent agenda item this evening? Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson and supported by Councilman Pennington that we approve all items on the consent agenda as presented in the agenda packet this evening. Any discussion on any of those items? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you're here on a consent agenda item this evening, God bless you for hanging around. They've all been approved. K1A is an announcement for a public hearing on September 23rd, 2019. Preliminary site plan review. Please bear with me. I'm not going to read this in its entirety this evening, but it's in the agenda packet. There will be a public hearing for the preliminary site review, which is the proposed Ashton Park one-family cluster development, southeast corner of East Square Lake and Willow Grove. Now is an opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. God bless you, Tony Haddad, for hanging around for this. Did you still want to speak this evening? Please come forward. Always nice to see you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I love you all, I swear. And Mr. Dijak, you know, he's the superintendent for Birmingham School District. You know, he'll tell you that my heart bigger than my body, I swear. I am here to say the truth and to be positive. Troy, city of Troy, it's my dream city. God must love me to bring me to this city. I was 23 years old when I came from Iraq, and I'm 75 now. And my wife and I, we met in Baghdad, and we came and we got married in Detroit, and we have 4 beautiful children, 10 grandchildren. And we've been married 52 years in December. And we, you know, we lived in Troy, 6507 John R. Road in Troy. And I love, you know, you guys doing a beautiful job with that John R. Beautiful. I'm having a dream, I swear. So what I want to, I've been living there for 39 years. I worked for Troy School District for 17 years. I raised good citizens. And I affected the students in Troy at Athens High School and Larson Middle School and Troy High School. I cheer for the football, Red Hawks. I am like Athens Red Hawks, So, but I love Troy High, they love me, And so I cheered for 9 years, and then I was hired at Troy School District, and now I was cheering even for every game. 7 times the Grand Marshal for the homecoming parade and all that stuff. But the reason I am here, I really want to tell you. First of all, we shouldn't hire manager, outside our city. Okay? I mean, seriously. So we should have our people here. They're running the city. Beautiful job. Why would bring another manager when we have Mr. Miller, Mr. Brandt, and all these wonderful, strong people, very, very good. So I understand. Little stuff I don't care about, it really doesn't bother me. But, big bribery or some, yes, should be investigated, and the criminal, should be accountable, And so I am here mainly, honestly, to thank you, starting with Mayor Slater.
Mr. Haddad, your 3 minutes is up. Can you think in about 35 seconds you can finish up? We'll allow you to finish up.
How many minutes?
35 minutes. No. How about 1 minute? 1 more minute.
Beautiful. Sure.
Thank you.
I am here to really thank you, Mr. Miller. You dedicated your life in this city, and you made it Troy, whatever it is, and there's, hundreds, behind the scene that made it possible. I love you all. I thank you. Thank you for, all of you, for your time. Mr. Slater could have been 10 years somewhere. He didn't have to. So I want to finish it. The other thing I want to say, please, don't mind me. I like to suggest, seriously, that the city council and the mayor and the city heads the departments in the city, they should be given a gift card of some kind, for coffee. Honest to God, it's not much, but it's really making you feel good. The other thing, how they remove, the liquor and beer and wine from the fire department. Those volunteers, they really, you should have that back. Seriously. They're all responsible and wonderful people.
Thank you. Always nice to see you, Mr. Haddad.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thanks for the positive.
And just one last thing. I know I'm in violation. Mr. Baker, I swear, I am going to support, Mr. Henderson, for mayor, not because you are not qualified. I just,
thank you,
decided to.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. You're not happy that the Athens football team beat Troy High 42-0, though, right? Okay. Anyone from council? I know. Understood. Anyone want to respond from council or staff? That's a good way to end the meeting. This is an opportunity for council comments, as there are no council referrals this evening. Any comments from council this evening? I do have some. Please go first.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question for City Attorney Bloom. There are a couple items I think you were looking for feedback on, or at least one item you were looking for feedback on. from I3, how would you like your feedback conveyed?
I'm assuming that by not convening a closed session for that, that you are okay with our recommendation. And so we will be proceeding with that. However, if that's not accurate, please let me know individually through email or phone call.
Thank you. That's how it was handled the first time. Thank you. I'm sure everyone that's in the city of Troy knows that Kim's Restaurant has closed and that Margaret and her family have decided to retire completely and move forward. And, you know, Kim's has been a landmark in the city of Troy for a long time, and I'm sorry to see it go, but I'm happy for the family because they're going to get to retire and they're going to get to enjoy their retirement. But what I want to bring forward is that, you know, Cindy Stewart Close, if she can hear this, please come in here. Oh, please. I just want you to know that on Thursday last week, Cindy called Mike Kerr, and we all know Mike Kerr. And Kim's had a lot of food that was left over, and they needed a place to get rid of it. So Cindy knew that, and she knew that Mike Kerr is always delivering food and clothing to the Baldwin Center in Pontiac. So they feed about 200 men and women up there at the Baldwin Center, children, and Cindy and coordinated this with Kim's and Mike Kerr, and they took everything that they had. They were preparing it at Kim's. They put it in containers. They put it in everything that they could, and they took it up to the Baldwin Center and fed many, many needy families and people up there, to the point where the line was going out the door, down the street, and Mike got a chance to witness all of this, and he said the joy on the faces of the people that were eating Kim's food was probably the best meal that they've had in their entire life, probably. And so I just want to pass along thanks to Cindy and Mike Kerr and Margaret from Kim's for taking that extra food and sending it up to the Baldwin Center and feeding the needy people up there. So I wanted to recognize Cindy and Mike and Kim. So Councilwoman Abraham.
One more thing. I can't believe I was remiss in mentioning that Troy Family Days starts this Thursday. And to me, it always starts with the best event, which is the naturalization ceremony. It's at 6 o'clock. If you have never been to a naturalization ceremony, I highly recommend that you go to it. It is probably one of the best feel-good moments you're going to have in a very long time, and particularly in the context of this being Patriot Week, I think very fitting and very appropriate. The joy and elation that you can feel, it's palpable, of people becoming U.S. citizens, it is really remarkable. If you have the opportunity to come by Troy Days on Thursday, 6 o'clock, it's the naturalization ceremony, I highly encourage you to do it. If you're having a bad day, I promise you that ceremony will turn things around. It's really quite moving. So, and then you can stick around for the good food, the rides, and just socializing with your neighbors. It's a great family event, and I know the Global Troy Advisory Committee has been highly engaged in putting together a program. So good time will be had by all. Fireworks on Saturday night, weather permitting, otherwise it's Sunday night. And can't wait to see everyone out there.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to reports. We've had a couple comments on the reports tonight. Any other comments from council? Thank you. I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. There is a closed session request, so we will adjourn into the boardroom for a closed session, and we certainly appreciate those that stuck around tonight. Many thanks for sticking around.